So Swamp Thing is back with episode 2, Worlds Apart, and I have to say it definitely complemented the first episode and added in even more of what people wanted to see in the first episode, and that is of course Swamp Thing. So let's talk about episode 2 in this review. How's it going, Swamp Things? Welcome to my episode 2 Worlds Apart review for Swamp Thing. Now, obviously, this is kind of a bittersweet video to make, and it kind of will be every review with the confirmed cancellation now of Swamp Thing. Just a disclaimer to everyone, by the way, when I made that video yesterday, I made it before quite literally every main article, whether it's from Deadline, Variety, you name it, was out and talked about the whole tax rebate issue kind of thing. And I do want to say, like, seriously, that is not 100% like all of the reasons as to why it was cancelled. There is definitely behind the scenes creative differences. Obviously, this tax issue thing is very fishy and would contribute to a lot of the destruction of this show. But believe it or not, I'm not gonna, this isn't the video for that. The whole tax North Carolina issue thing with how much they were supposed to give them and everything like that doesn't really add up as much as you think it would be. But that's all I'm going to say about that. But either way, Swamp Thing is cancelled, guys. 100% confirmed. But that doesn't mean we're not going to enjoy these episodes. Especially to those people saying like, oh yeah, you know, it was garbage anyway in episode 1. That's not why it got cancelled. Like, episode 1, the majority of people loved episode 1. And with what we're talking about today with episode 2, I really feel like they added more into it, especially with the back half of the episode, really adding in a lot more suspense and horror elements, and this whole episode in general, especially with Shauna popping up and what was going on there. But let's get into this, guys. Subscribe for more Swamp Thing videos just like this to make sure you're staying updated, and go ahead and like this video for more Swamp Thing content. So naturally, this episode would more or less pick up from the end of last episode with what happened to Alec. Everyone is kind of looking for him, especially Abby Arcane. And this is where we also meet the sheriff, who is actually Matt Cable's mother, who also takes like a low-key dig at Abby Arcane as well, with a hint of saying, you know, you would know about kind of all the dark stuff that happens in the swamp. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing there, but this is 100% a nod to her best friend Shauna, who died when I think they were 17, 18. That got revealed to us in this episode. And obviously there's lots of hints throughout this episode in terms of what's happening to Shauna, and I've definitely got a theory that I will kind of lightly mention later on in this video. Also, I don't think that Matt Cable's mum, the sheriff, is so keen on Abby Arcane because she knows that her son Matt Cable has held a flame for her for so many years and has kind of, I guess, been let down. I mean, I feel like it's a bit of a silly thing because it's not like they've ever been together. I have to say, when we first saw Swamp Thing like walking like a giant, laying down those freaking elephant sounding prints on the ground, that was so cool. I was just like, yes, we've got something to look forward to in this episode with more to see from Swamp Thing. It definitely got me hyped up from this moment onwards. And in this moment as well, we do see that Swamp Thing is connected to Susie. If you remember, Susie's the girl from the hospital who was kind of infected with the flu swampy thing. Essentially, we saw Swamp Thing ripping himself apart, and he was trying to basically get back to Alec Holland. Now, this was actually really sad to see. This does get explored when Susie talks to the doctor and how she explains how scared Alec is because of what he's become. But then we see in this moment and throughout the episode as well in certain parts how he just regenerates and how fast he regenerates. It was literally crazy. Like, he tore like a part of his brain out, and it, you know, it was all like entwining back together, and that was really, really cool. You can see how much amazing like production this show has. Of course, they would explore Abby feeling quite down about Alec because they had quite the connection. Now, this was shown in the episode through her with Liz, her reporter friend. And we also got that moment from a more than likely dead Shauna. If you guys remember when Abby was waking up, this definitely does pick up from the comments from the sheriff I mentioned a second ago with that dig she gave to Abby, and then lo and behold, she saw like a dead Shauna, which, as I said, was quite a recurring theme in this episode. So this is where she decides to go to Avery Sutherland because naturally he could give her access to Alec Holland's lab, which is obviously kind of off limits ever since his death, or death. Now, since Abby, which is basically the premise of the show initially, is to obviously explore what the flipping heck happened to Alec Holland, she goes to the Avery Sutherland mansion, and naturally there's loads of pictures of Shauna around the place. And this is where we see, I think to the surprise of quite a few viewers, that they actually have, you know, a seemingly good relationship compared to that of Abby and Maria, where we saw last episode, Maria absolutely ripped into Abby, and it was actually quite hard to watch because she was being pretty mean, because she takes things a much different way and reacted very differently to Shauna's death than Avery did. This is where we also learn that the Sutherlands actually took Abby in when she was 8, so this actually made me think that perhaps Abby did have something to do with her mother's death, and just in terms of the comics. Now in the comics she accidentally killed her mother, and as I said in my first review, we don't know exactly how much they're going into the rot side of things and just comic book, mega traditional comic book accuracy. Definitely excited to see what they do there, but I felt like in this episode, whilst we're talking about the rot, they definitely gave us some nods to a different kind of adaptation they might be doing with that, and I'll get onto that in just a minute. But of course, in this moment, we get some more discussion about how Avery didn't blame Abby for Shauna's death like Maria did, and in that time, he should have stood up for her more, should have defended her, whereas we can just assume that in that time when Maria was going crazy at Abby, he just kind of stood back and like let it happen. But lo and behold, guys, when everything kind of seemed fine and dandy between these two, he didn't want to let her into the lab because of proprietary reasons. Basically, he's a fishy as hell dude. We knew that from the first second we met him. This kind of ended a bit salty between those two. It's like they have, on the surface, face value, like good relationship, but Abby knows who this guy is, and he's a very shallow kind of hollow man, despite how friendly he can appear, and this certainly came across later on in the episode as well with Jason Woodrue. At this point in the episode, guys, we saw Maria Sutherland visit a lady called Nimu. I believe that's how you pronounce her name, in the swamp. She's kind of like a voodoo-y, magic-y kind of like person-y, worse-y, and this scene just definitely spiked my interest in terms of, okay, so what are they doing in terms of the comic book stuff? Because this stuff was very Elemental Forces-esque. Now, this whole scene was obviously about Maria approaching her because she keeps seeing Shauna dead, and then she swears there's maybe a little bit more to it, so can you just do a bit of your magic-y, wishy-washy stuff on me to hopefully make me feel a little bit better about it? And when she did, that is when she saw a dead Shauna, like we've seen a couple of times already, and then she got sent flying back. And lo and behold, Maria got sent flying back too. So like they're definitely poking in to a lot of more stuff which I didn't think they were necessarily going to from that first episode. It was kind of hard to figure out exactly how grounded this take would be, even though like there would be a Swamp Thing that I thought they might keep some of this kind of stuff out. Now Nimu says that there's been a shift in the balance of the light and the dark, something vast, dark, and growing in the awful and the rot of the water. Now I just really want to pay attention to that line, specifically where they say growing in the awful and the rot of the water. Now of course I don't want to go far reaching here. That could obviously mean Swamp Thing. I guarantee 99% of people meant like she was referring to Swamp Thing, like the elemental forces of the green have risen up and Alec Holland has been growing from, you know, but this could also hint, like she didn't have to use the word growing in the awful and the rot of the water. It just makes me think the fact that we keep seeing Shauna more, and that is more of the rot side of things, the way they're presenting it, I feel like this is meant to be a misdirect. Now, I'm not like guaranteeing this to you. Maybe this is a bit of conspiracy theory crafting from myself, and it could mean Alec Holland obviously growing into the Swamp Thing, but this also, just from experience, could mean, and you know, the rot is very much so a thing in the comics, they could be doing something different. Maybe not even Anton Arcane. It could be giving the rot to something like, I don't want to say like a freaking reborn Shauna, and she's going to be like the avatar of the rot, but you kind of get the vibe I'm going with. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Any Swamp Thing fans who kind of know about this sector of the comics, because ultimately, bottom line here, like what we're seeing with Shauna and everything else there, I'm convinced that that's not all to do with Swampy, like, and the green, like in the forest. There's definitely more at play here, obviously, and I feel like this is also going to link with Jason Woodrue maybe at some point as well. Now this is where we meet Daniel Cassidy. If you didn't already know, like, well, they painted out in the episode that he's the Blue Devil, but he's not quite that Blue Devil yet. I don't know if you guys saw that long trailer of Swamp Thing, but we actually see him morph into a lot more of the Blue Devil than what I thought we would get, especially even in season 1. So, you know, obviously he's actually played, and he's like what they say, like the movie star of like their town or whatever, but something more will happen to him, but I don't want to give too much of that away, but I'm dead excited to see it. This is where Abby was looking into Alec Holland, and it just so turns out he recorded like vlogs, you know, video journals on Daniel's laptop. So this is where we saw Abby look at them, and we see his vlogs, and essentially obviously, it was quite sweet to see him talk about Abby Arcane and how he found her very lovely. Just yet again, more like low-key hints at like their comic book relationship. So guys, this is where we meet the Woodrues, but more in particularly Jason Woodrue, who I want to focus on. Now, he comes across very extremely knowledgeable and very arrogant. Now, he is responsible for creating that accelerant, you know, for the mutagens in the swamp. Now, it was kind of predictable. I said this in the first review of episode 1, but we learned that the accelerant was intended from Avery's side of things to ultimately just make profit, you know, whether that's via more trees to drink in the swamp waters, more plants to make medicines, more land to develop, essentially a guy who just wants to make money, monetization at the cost of whatever happens to the swamp, right? But he didn't expect this blowback, the blowback that came from the accelerant, everything we learned in episode 1 because of this guy, Jason Woodrue, because people were getting very sick with it. He didn't want that blowback or his name involved in that mess, and we see that side of Avery that we got teased with a little bit from Abby earlier come out, where he's like, I'll drag you all down with me if this doesn't get sorted out, even though Jason Woodrue is completely certain that he didn't spark all of this. You know, I definitely feel like I don't know if he will get involved with the rot or anything like that, but I can just tell Jason Woodrue it's going to be like some kind of setup later in the season for something that he gets involved with all of this sciencey, wincy, swampy, elemental stuff. So nearing the end of the episode now, guys, we see that Susie is actually kind of stowawayed on a boat into the swamp, where obviously we see these guys who are not dumping stuff, they're actually retrieving something, and they use the very interesting words of, you know, the law get their hand on these boxes, the old man is going to kill us, and lo and behold, who is that? More fishy stuff from Avery. So Avery obviously is quite a catalyst for all of this stuff. They definitely used the what's in the box line, and my only guess to that is it's just like the swamp accelerant that we saw Alec and Abby get a hold of last episode. There's multiple ones of them throughout the swamp, and now Avery's trying to do a bit of damage control and, you know, get them back before anyone can like basically find hard evidence against him. Now luckily we had Swamp Thing just wake up in time to help Susie, because, you know, he hears her panting after running away from that guy who, you know, struck down that other officer. Now at this time we see Abby going after Susie as well, seeing the flashlights in the distance. Now this is what I mean in this episode. They definitely, I feel like at this point, not that I really was scared or anything by it, but the suspense and the horror elements and that like the soundtrack they were using was very good for this episode. I really enjoyed that. I trust a lot of you horror fans were loving this part of the episode, you know, just with the chase happening, with the suspense of knowing Swamp Thing was going to do something to that guy. Now, this is where we saw Swamp Thing versus that guy, and he kind of used his powers connected to the swamps in like an outcry. I don't think he even really intended or realized what potential he has as Swamp Thing, and that's when the vines just grabbed the guy and impaled him and basically like ripped him apart. And, you know, that moment with Susie and Swamp Thing was kind of cool. Like, you see the humanity in Alec, which is a very cool thing, I'm very excited to see them explore throughout this season. Obviously, Abby arrived and saw like a little kid with a giant ass freaky Swamp Thing, and I like how he just stayed there and didn't approach her, because you have to imagine like how infuriating this must be for Alec. Like, you know, he's like, hey, it's not who you think it is. I am Alec. But he can't exactly convey that across. So I'm glad that he made the decision to just stay there. But that moment after that, where Susie actually says to Abby on the boat, now Swamp Thing says he doesn't know what's happening to him, and that also his name is Alec. And I didn't actually expect, guys, for that reveal to be so soon. Now, I thought they might have delayed that by an episode or two, to be honest, and I could have imagined some complaints saying, oh, why are they dragging this out so long? So I'm actually glad they did get Susie to say to Abby, like, that's Alec. And so I'm glad things are kicking by the end of episode 2. And this propels us, I feel, into a much more convincing and fascinating storyline for the rest of Swamp Thing from episode 3 onwards. Because, you know, as much as I enjoyed the first episode, like, I did see a lot of comments of people saying, like, it was a slow burner. But as I said, I didn't have an issue with that. I understood it. But I feel like this will make a lot of people happy, the fact that they've tackled his identity to Abby so fast. Oh yeah, and yet again, guys, you know, that Shauna thing, like Maria sleeping alongside Shauna in Shauna's room in the Sutherland household, definitely interesting, and I'm just really hoping that it's something to do with the rot, because as I said, I don't think this is strictly linked to Swampy himself. But that was the episode, guys. So I thought it was an improvement on episode 1. As I said, I enjoyed episode 1, but this one felt like the ball was rolling a little bit more. So I think it's great. I think, honestly, as well as the show goes on, despite the cancellation, you know, there's a lot of people who only see the title and don't actually realize the reasons behind the cancellation. I guarantee, well, I can't guarantee it, but I would like to safely assume that by episode 8, this is still going to be such a high quality show that 70 to 80% of the fan base will really thoroughly enjoy. But there's going to be a lot of comments saying, but then why was it cancelled? Well, there is a lot more to it than that. But it's just a shame. So let's just enjoy it while we can. Enjoy season 1. But you can contribute to saving Swamp Thing, of course. I don't know what this will massively do, but you can make their attention by, you know, hashtag Save Swamp Thing on Twitter and stuff. I'll leave links relevant to that. If you want to appeal and support this show and you're a big fan already, links are in the description down below, and information from a post on Reddit that is all organized about being all about this. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, subscribe for more Swamp Thing videos like this. Like it if you did enjoy and you want to see more Swamp Thing content. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you Swamp Things in the next video. Goodbye.